wonderful and deeply scary all at once. And there is definitely like highs and lows of approaching the end of Lore Olympus, because I know it's always sad when our favourite stories come to an end, but also it's sad when our favourite stories keep going and we all know in our hearts that they probably should end. So at this point, I'm like, I've really enjoyed the story that I've made, and though it is scary to face change and, you know, in something that's been a constant in my life for over half a decade, it's also important to me to honour where I think the story should end and make sure that it is enjoyable for the readers. I think I've always wanted to write a Hades and Persephone story because obviously I really like them. It's like very much a chicken and egg situation, because I think in the beginning I thought that I was going to use a very abstract black and white style, and I realised that wasn't very enticing or fun for me. And I started drawing these very like vibrant characters, and as I drew them, I understood more about the story the more that I explored the art style. And I guess an example of that is, you know, Persephone is like a very bright colour, and the underworld is a very like dark blue. And so when she's there, she really sticks out. So it's just environmental processes like that that really helped inspire the direction of the story. One of my favourite things that I have learnt from making Lore Olympus is researching the time in which all the poems were written in and learning how to contextualise the information that's in them so it's relative to the time and makes a little bit more sense. A really good example of this is when Odysseus is on his way home, and I believe he's a couple of steps away from Ithaca, and he's on an island, and the people there are like, let's, you know, participate in basically like athletic games. And originally when I read this piece, he gets really upset, and I used to think it was because he couldn't do the sports, essentially, and everyone was like, oh no, Odysseus is crying because he can't do sports. But what he's really crying about on researching it is like his loss of what his name means, and he's been through so much to get home, and no one really remembers who he is, and that's why he's crying. And learning things like that is fascinating to me. If I could bring one character into the real world, it would probably be Hecate, because she seems very well organised and I need help. And I'm writing something that I personally find cathartic. It's always great to have those conclusions that like make the readership really happy. That's always fantastic, because it's really hard to predict what people are going to like and what they're not going to like. But when you stick the landing, it's great. It's a fantastic feeling. And I'm writing something that I personally find cathartic. Many of like the character first scenes are always fantastic. So like the first time like the characters have like their kiss or like express their feelings, those firsts are, you know, always enjoyed by the readership, and that's a really, really great moment for me as a creator. I think with the process of bringing like my ideas for backgrounds and setting to life, I try to, you know, what's in your mind, sometimes it's very hard to translate that onto a page to share with other people. So I think a lot of my ideas involve just experimenting with what's in front of me and moving it around until it works. I think sometimes what's in my head will translate and sometimes it does not. But I think that's like a really important part of the creative process, to see what is possible. This is an episode of Lore Olympus that I am working on. So currently what this is I've sent the sketches to my assistants and they've sent it back to me with the flats and the line work, and now it's my turn to render them and put all the wonderful special effects on, as well as include the backgrounds. So right now we have a very dramatic pose of Demeter, and I'm just working on her skin and hair. I mean, I really enjoy doing like very expressive figures, but what I will say is I feel really surprised in saying this, but I really enjoy just like a landscape. Like if you ask me to illustrate like a soothing meadow with like beautiful mountains in the background, I'm there. It's a chill moment for me to sit there and just layer up all of these different elements to make a beautiful background. Feet are so hard. Feet are like the hardest thing, I think. Hands over feet. For sure. Like, feet are just, they're so odd. They're so odd. Like a hand, I'm like, yeah, that's a challenge, but you know, you end up with like your tried and true poses for hands. Like most artists have like a go-to where they're like, I know how to draw this type of hand. I got a few angles I can do. But the feet, oh boy. And there's something about like, I feel like I know how to draw Hades' shoe, like he has a very pointy shoe, but as soon as I draw him in a sock, there's a chapter where he's wearing socks and he looks very vulnerable. I don't like it. It's not a thing that I enjoy doing to him, is putting him in socks. It feels wrong. So I have different things for different parts of the process. So when I'm writing, I'll just listen to either music that's got no lyrics to it whatsoever, no singing, or like soundscapes. And when I'm sketching, I like to listen to like podcasts and audiobooks and things like that. And when I am doing my colors, I like to put on a movie in the background or a TV show. The longer the better. If a character were to get their own spin-off, that is a hard choice because I love all of my characters equally. But I think I would probably pick perhaps Aries, because I feel like he has a lot of work to do to get his life together, and that could be quite interesting. There could be many shenanigans, so I think there's a lot of opportunities there for creative fun. I really like looking at like vintage clothing and silhouettes that are, you know, timeless. I mean, obviously it's really hard to future-proof work that's set in a modern setting because of course like the times are going to change like rapidly and there's not a lot you can do about it. But in terms of like fashion, there are just some silhouettes that are always going to look very classy, so I try to pick things that will not age. Like I think there was a chapter recently where she had like a vintage Dior look, which I really liked. And I feel like that will always look nice. Like in 10 years' time, I'll be like, she looked good. But there are some outfits which are more modern where I'm like, that probably won't look good in 10 years' time. But, you know, we've still got the inspired vintage Dior outfit, so that's good. That's safe. I definitely love rendering the works and shading everything and applying all the effects, because I think I just really enjoy texture, and adding the texture into these figure drawings really helps them come to life, I think. And it's just, you know, it puts me in a flow state, which is always fun if you've experienced a flow state. All all the time. There's a lot to be inspired by. I like, on the pottery, like all of like the sharp and very energetic angles that they use. There's a lot to work with there. And I also like to look at all the different types of fashions that they had and like try to imagine how it would work and how it's layered up, because sometimes I don't quite understand what's happening there on some of those very historical garments, and part of the fun is finding that out and seeing how it would work. So I feel like in the beginning, Hades kind of has this identity, which in some ways is like a little bit immature, but he's like, this is my identity. But I think when he starts to let those like face value things go that he feels about himself and really just starts to embrace, like, I suppose his own truths, which, is a little thing, like they're just little steps. That's when he's able to like make progress in his own healing journey and, become a more fully realized character. Like, I've had to learn how to, I guess, take myself a little bit more seriously in my process. And what that really means is when I first started out, I'd be like, oh, this isn't really that important, so I'm not going to bother, like, having a good setup in terms of like libraries and things like that and resources to use, or just even like with layer management and things like that. And, I think I had like quite an untidy workspace, like digitally in the beginning. But as I've, added people to my team and stuff, it's just, I've realized that it's disrespectful to them to give them, a huge file with 10 billion, unsorted layers to deal with. And I'm like, I realize I have to like include other people in this process and make it easy for them as well. Throughout, like, particularly Persephone's journey, she learns to be more assertive as time goes on. And I always find that I could stand to be more assertive, so that really helps. And I think in terms of Hades, I think a lot of his growth has to do with him admitting that he like wants certain things in terms of like not wanting to be isolated and like, not being ashamed of like wanting things that other people would want. And I think that has in turn helped me, express when I'm like, it's okay to like ask for company or, to just seek out more friendships and things like that. I think that's helped me, yeah. I do not know if this counts as a full circle moment, but I have had like a few invitations to weddings for people who have like met their significant other through reading Lore Olympus, which I think is such a treat because that does not happen to everyone. And when I get those invitations, I'm like, oh, that's so nice. So that's very special, yes. While making Lore Olympus over the past half decade, I've really learnt where my limits lie and where to set healthy boundaries, because it's really important to make sure that when you're doing these projects that you have proper rest, like mentally and physically, and it's important to feel like you've had a real break in order to, be your most authentic self when you're creating works that you want to share. Like any creative person, I'm always working on a story or two alongside any current works that I have, and I'm definitely excited to explore those new works in the future.